More than 13.5 million COVID-19 tests have now been processed in Ontario, but the testing push has taken its toll on our lab workers. With more on this, we're joined live by the CEO of Laboratory Professionals Association of Ontario, Michelle Hoad. Michelle, thanks so much for your time this morning.
Good morning.
This is sort of an angle throughout this pandemic that we haven't heard a lot about, the strain on people who are working in laboratories, which are overrun right now. What can you say about the state of workers and work right now in your profession?
So this is a group of people that we very rarely see. So when we go to the hospital, we see the doctor, we see the nurses, and we know they are working tremendously, many, many hours right now. But what happens behind the scenes are a group of people that actually do the COVID testing, do 284 other million tests a year that we don't see. So, we were talking about 13.7 million tests done to date over 13 months. We average that out to about 1 million tests a month. These people are completely overworked right now. And it's a group we have to remember that they are there. We can't forget that behind every test is a human being.
When we ask the professionals about COVID-19, how quickly it's changing, how the science is emerging, I assume that a lot of that change and the learning happens in the laboratories as well, the testing protocols for the variants of concern, for example. Can you talk a little bit about that and how the people behind the scenes are so important in this emerging technology and science?
Absolutely. So we've got a group of people right now for the past 13 months that have gone into work every day. Their protocols may change every day. What their labs look like needs to change. They're adding additional instruments. We call them machines, but they're instruments that come into their lab. They've got to figure out where they're going to go. They've got to figure out new protocols, and they've got to get trained. Every day, every month, things change. As the virus changes, the variants of concern change is coming into that environment. So, it's interesting because I know a lot of the discussion lately has been the numbers, but it is baffling to understand how we are sitting here at 4,000 tests every day positive, doing on average 50,000 tests when there's a stay-at-home order. It's very confusing for us in the lab right now.
What is it like? What's an average day like for someone who's working in a laboratory? And I know that there are so many different positions. So, pick a position and tell us what it's like behind the scenes.
It all depends on what that is. But if you're, working in a COVID center, or you're working in the microbiology lab, you will come in. There's so many specimens to be tested. There's a fair bit of quality work you need to do. You need to ensure that the data that you've received is correct. You're now working with that test. You're loading it in a machine. There's assistance that happens from medical lab assistant technicians. You then are resulting that test. You're ensuring that those results are accurate and precise, and you're doing that under a very stressful situation. Yeah. So I think one thing we forget is that is a stressful situation, and these people are doing the best that they can.
The volume of material that they're working with is sort of unfathomable. How do you learn to work in an environment that's, where the volume of the work that you're bringing in is constantly growing?
That's a great question. All I can tell you about this group of people is one word I use all the time is they're very resilient. So we started the pandemic understaffed. So we've got lots of groups right now that are working extra hours, and they've been doing this for a long period of time. But they come in positive, every day understanding that this is the health and the health of our economy, and these results are important. I cannot speak just highly of how amazing this group has been on trying to keep moving forward. But we all have our breaking point.
In terms of the turnaround time, what would you say to the average person sitting at home right now who perhaps has had a COVID-19 test and they're waiting for their results, or they've had this experience within the last year and a bit, and they get frustrated with the amount of time that it's taking to get the results back, and they have to stay at home in the meantime, constantly checking the website? What would you say to someone who has experienced or is experiencing that frustration right now?
So I can speak to it personally. So I've been COVID tested, and my results were about 8-hour turnaround time. It depends on where you're located, and it depends on what's happening in that lab. So for example, if you've got a lab in a rural and remote community that may have a small instrument, they are also taking all the testing coming in from the ICU units. So we got to remember, depending on where you are, your results may be quicker. It depends on how many tests are coming in there. It depends on how that lab is staffed. So one thing I would say to the people of Ontario is we ask you to be patient, understanding that these people are working understaffed, overworked, doing the best they can. You will get your results. The flip side of that is we're also asking you, as we are doing this work, we need you to do your part and make sure you stay at home.
Yeah, some good reminders. Okay, the CEO of Laboratory Professionals Association of Ontario, Michelle Hoad, thanks so much for your time this morning. Great to have this perspective.
Have a good day.
You too.